sports note for Wednesday, January 29th. I'm sorry I haven't been with you guys for a little bit. I've actually had some sports notes in the can, but my camera has not been working to record an accompanying video. I know that's not stopped me in the past, but I definitely wanted to get something out there. And the NBA trade deadline is on February 6th, so we're a little more than 10 days away. But we've actually got, or right around 10 days here. But if you had the Sacramento Kings as sellers on your bingo card, raise your hand and I can basically call you a damn liar. The Kings right now are sitting at 24-22 going into action, which tips off in less than a half hour from when I'm recording this tonight, against Philadelphia. And the Sixers, one of the most disappointing teams in the league. They've won 3 straight. But the Kings right now sitting at 24-22. They're sitting 10th in the West. They're a game and a half up on Golden State for the 10th and final spot in the playoffs, which would put them as the last team into to the play-in tournament. But they're also only 3 games back of the Los Angeles Lakers for the Pacific Division lead. Again, even only 2 games over 500. So it shows you how wide open the Western Conference is right now. Now, the Kings, we're playing decent basketball, but ultimately decided back on December 27th to fire head coach Mike Brown after 2.5 years. Brown got Sacramento to the playoffs for the first time in 16 years back in the summer of 2023. Ends up winning the NBA Coach of the Year. Second time he did it. The first time was 2009 with LeBron and the Cleveland Cavaliers, which was his first head coaching gig, his first full-time head coaching gig in the NBA. Sacramento is kind of struggled to find their footing a little bit at times, but was still, in the contention, hovering around. It's still very early in the season. There's still 30 games left to go for just about everybody. But the Kings eventually fire Brown and replace him with one of Brown's top assistants, and that would be former Sacramento stalwart from the 2000s decade, Doug Christie. Now, Christie, remember, was part of the greatest show on court, which was Vlade Divac, Mike Bibby, Chris Webber, himself, and the fourth, and Peja Stojakovic, who were honestly the most entertaining team in the NBA, but kept running into the Los Angeles Lakers every year. They were the Josh Allen running up against Kobe and Shaq with the Lakers, who were Patrick Mahomes, ended up, winning, three-peating during that period. We always remember Game 7 of that legendary series. But really, since Doug Christie has come into the fold, the Kings have finally started to right the ship a little bit. They're 11-4 going into action tonight under Christie, and they've vaulted themselves again back into that playoff position, to where also at this point they're only 2 games back of the Los Angeles Clippers for 6th in the Western Conference, which would get them out of the play-in tournament and would guarantee them a best of 7 series in the first round, as opposed to essentially 1 game and your potential season is over. Unless you're in the 7 or 8, then you actually would get 2 games at that point. But we actually have seen how, some of those teams have fared really since the play-in tournament became a thing during the COVID bubble. Now, the Kings they're one of those teams that seem to be on the cusp every year, but only in the Western Conference can a team like the Sacramento Kings finish 10 games above 500 last year and miss the playoffs completely, to where if they would have been in the Eastern Conference, they would have been a top 6. Shows you how deep the Western Conference is, to where, again, Brown gets the Kings to their first Pacific Division championship since 2003, gets them to their first playoff appearance in 16 years, and then gets fired unceremoniously, which caught all of the players, caught tons of the media, and caught really the entire coaching fraternity by surprise, considering the job that they were doing at that point. And then, but sometimes you have to get some fresh blood in there. I like how they're playing under Christie, but now came the announcement, or at least made publicly on Monday, that they would be listening to offers for all-star guard De'Aaron Fox. Now, Fox is the best player on this team. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. DeMar DeRozan is 35 years old. He doesn't have too much time left. Domantas Sabonis is one of the best centers in basketball. He's a perennial double-double every single night. He's a perennial all-star. If Fox moves, he's going to be the focal point of this team. He's been a very big part of Sacramento's resurgence and their accelerated rebuilding. He's only 28. Fox is 27, and just turned 27 the week before Christmas, but he's also your leading scorer. He's also a former All-Star. He was a third-team All-NBA player during that playoff run in 2023. He was also the clutch player of the year that season. He's also on a very friendly contract. Let's kind of call that what it is. He's making 34 and change million this year, and that bumps up to about 37 million next year because he signed a 5-year rookie max extension in 2020. So he would be an unrestricted free agent after next year, and for only 37 million, it's very affordable for teams basically looking to get a top 30, 35 player in the NBA, if not possibly a top 25 player, with what Fox has the ability to do, and the leadership he's shown as essentially the focal point of this franchise right now. For them to be able to go out and for a team to be able to go out and get him. Now, where he ends up remains to be seen, but I'd like to actually, think about some of the scenarios here. What if Sacramento keeps this run going under Christie and actually has kind of like a Cleveland epiphany, like when they let go of David Blatt with the best record in the NBA and then brought in Tyronn Lue and made a run to a championship? Is Sacramento, good enough to become a champion after this coaching change? Probably not, especially when you've still got, when you still have Dallas, the defending West champions, starting to play a little bit better. You've got the best team in the NBA in the Western Conference, playing out of the Western Conference right now in the Oklahoma City Thunder. You would still have to go through Cleveland or Boston or the Knicks, who are playing much better ball as of late in the East if you got to the finals. Sacramento is one of those teams that when it was in the late 90s and the early 2000s and they had the greatest show on court, it was very cool. It was also very cool that any team kind of wearing black and like silver or purple or something, it was just marketable because that's what everybody was wearing at that point. And they went back to those uniforms, which was honestly one of the best marketing things that they did. They renovated the old Arco Arena, a few years back. They've quickly turned that, even though it's a bit of an older arena, it's quickly become one of the nicest arenas in the entire country. And the Golden One Center, they really don't have an issue with trying to pack that place at least to above 75-80% capacity every single night, even though, they don't have the postseason success to show, because that one year that they did get to the playoffs in 2023 was against Golden State. They ended up losing in 7 games, even though they jumped out to a 2-0 lead in that series, basically on the back of Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, who basically elevated himself from a great player to a household name during that period and put basically the entire NBA on notice that said, hey, don't sleep on me because I play in a small market. If anything, if Fox were to stay, I would love to see this, because Sacramento being good shows that a small market team can compete because the NBA with that salary cap and the luxury tax kind of forces teams to spend a little bit. They still have 27 million before they hit the luxury tax cap, and then and then you run into like Golden State or Boston territory that are paying dozens, if not hundreds of millions in fines every year afterwards. But it's one of those situations like Sacramento being good again. It benefits the NBA in the long run because it's kind of like if the Pittsburgh Pirates were good in baseball. It's like when the Anaheim Ducks or like an Ottawa Senators or when Buffalo finally gets to the playoffs in the NHL, everyone's going to jump on their back because it's the little guy. It's the team that was good, was bad for a long time, and is now getting good again because they're doing everything the right way. With the core that Sacramento has set up, they have the potential to do a lot of damage because a lot of their players are really starting to come into the prime of their careers. Again, we talked about Fox just turning 27. We talked about Sabonis turning 28. Sixth man Malik Monk just hit 26, and he'll be 27 at the very, very end of the regular season or very early into the playoffs. Really, the old hats on their roster is center Alex Len, who's 31 and is basically making about $2 million a year. You've got Jay Crowder, career journeyman, making basically almost league minimum at this point at 34. But the other focal point of their roster right now is 35-year-old DeMar DeRozan, who's only got this year and next year on his contract. And then, for all we know, DeRozan may hang things up because he's going to be 37. If anyone's going to get moved, I would think that somebody might want to go out and get a veteran presence like a DeMar DeRozan. De'Aaron Fox would be great, but the idea that DeRozan making $23.4 million as opposed to Fox, who's owed 34.8 this year and 37, almost 37 flat. It's like, maybe like $40,000 over 37 million next year would be a more beneficial option, even though you're only going to be able to get a couple of years out of DeRozan, maybe sign him to one more extension, and he walks away for good. Fox has still got at least a good 5, 6, 7, 8 years in him. He is going to be a very, very key focal point and possibly that next step type player for whatever franchise wants to go out and get him. But the obvious choice here, if I was Sacramento, you got to figure out a way to get De'Aaron Fox to stay, at least through this year. If you want to move him in the offseason and be able to get some parts back, you've still got enough talent with your roster to be able to maybe get a player, get a decent draft pick to be able to maybe get his heir apparent. Now, granted, remember, Fox was the number 5 overall pick back in 2017 and basically kind of took, the NBA. He was one of the young group of players that we're seeing now that's dramatically come into their own and kind of changed the way that we look at the NBA now. Kind of moving on from some of the old hat, where you actually look at LeBron, we look at Steph, we look at KD, and we realize those guys only got a couple of years left. We got to turn over to the next guard, and that next guard would be Shai in Oklahoma City, Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland, Jalen Brunson, Jason Tatum. And you could definitely throw De'Aaron Fox's name into that equation. But would he win a championship in Sacramento? Who's to say? They have all the capability in the world, because if you think about it, if he hangs around for a little bit, look at some of the other teams in that division. The Lakers are leading that division, but Anthony Davis is not going to be playing for too much longer. LeBron's only got a year or two left. His kid played with him in the opener, is struggling dramatically every time he gets put back into the rotation by JJ Redick. He's playing well down in the G League. He's probably not going to translate into anything more than a rotation player on the back half of that rotation in the NBA. The Los Angeles Clippers are a very, very, they've got a lot of legendary talent, but they are a very old team. Let's be completely honest here. If you look at the rest of the division, you've got the Phoenix Suns that are rumored to be going after Jimmy Butler, who's 35 years old and is a locker room cancer, and you're going to put him basically with Kevin Durant, who's another locker room tabloid guy that every time he moves, it's very much like Kyrie Irving or James Harden, which ironically enough, all three of them were paired together in Brooklyn, at some point, but kind of forces his way out. And then you've got the Golden State Warriors, who are trying to get younger, but quite honest, let's be 110% honest. Once Draymond Green and Steph Curry basically move on within the course of the next 3 years, Golden State's going to be back to rebuild mode. So this is prime opportunity for Sacramento to get themselves maybe back where they were and become part of that upper echelon. But it really all hinges on what happens in the coming weeks with De'Aaron Fox. If Fox is going to be moved, you've got to make sure that you get enough either draft capital, cash considerations, or certainly enough players to be able to keep you in the hunt, because you're still in the hunt to get to the playoffs. You don't want to actually kind of hang on that unless you start falling back, maybe fall to 12th, 13th in the conference. But if you're starting to creep up to 7 or 8, does this also maybe sway Fox to stay, maybe sign a 2-year extension, and then from there he'd be 30 years old by the time this extension and then the next extension, even with a restructuring, would come into play? I'm not, who's to say that they maybe sign him to a supermax, which is entirely possible after finishing out this rookie deal next year, and you keep a lot of their core there, and who's to say where they are this time, maybe next year or in 2026. So let me know what you guys think. What happens with De'Aaron Fox? Where do you want to see De'Aaron Fox go? And what do you think are the chances of Sacramento trying to convince De'Aaron Fox to at least stay through this season and possibly beyond? And I will be back with you guys very, very soon. Wise Guys on Sunday night. And again, I will talk to you guys very, very soon. Take care.